Welcome to A1 Storyteller, the place where truth meets thunder and every story shakes the ground beneath us. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the moments when justice speaks for itself. Today's story is one of those moments, a tale where entitlement collides with unyielding law, where one woman's lofty airs are brought crashing down in less than 2 minutes by a man of unwavering integrity. Let's dive into the saga of Mayor's Karen wife thinks she is above the law. 2 minutes later, she gets owned by a black cop. In the heart of a polished town called Crestfield, manicured lawns, tree-lined avenues, and pristine white houses formed a picture-perfect scene. On the surface, this was a community of high society, where every smile was rehearsed and every gesture measured. Crestfield was not only known for its physical beauty, but also for the reputation of its leaders. At the helm of this town was Mayor Richard Whitmore, a charismatic man whose smooth words and polished image hid a complex network of old-school politics and favoritism. Mayor Whitmore's charm had earned him admiration and support. His public appearances were always orchestrated with meticulous care. But behind closed doors, whispers told a different story. His wife, Cynthia Whitmore, was notorious in Crestfield. Known to many as the town's embodiment of entitlement and disdain, Cynthia carried herself with an air of superiority that made many uneasy. Always clad in the finest designer clothes and sporting an immaculate coiffure, she believed that her status, as the wife of the mayor, placed her above the very laws that governed the citizens. It was on one crisp Friday morning, when fate and law were destined to collide, that Cynthia's world would be challenged in a way no one could have anticipated. Officer Darius King was a recent addition to the Crestfield police force, transferred from a larger city where discipline and order reigned supreme. He was a man defined by his steady gaze, calm demeanor, and a life steeped in service. Years in the military had taught him that fairness was not negotiable. His presence was a silent challenge to any form of injustice. Darius was a tall, dignified black man with an unwavering commitment to the principles of law and equality. That Friday, while concluding his routine patrol, Darius received a call over the radio. A disturbance had been reported at the intersection of 5th and Maple. The message was terse. A vehicle was parked in a designated fire lane, obstructing emergency access, and the driver refused to comply with repeated requests to move. It was a straightforward call, but in Crestfield, even simple calls could reveal hidden truths. Darius navigated the streets with purpose, arriving at the scene where a small crowd had gathered. In the glare of the early sun, a luxurious black Mercedes G-Wagon was conspicuously parked across a bright red fire lane. An act that disrupted the rhythm of the morning and set the stage for an unexpected confrontation. Stepping out of his cruiser, Darius approached the vehicle with measured steps. He knocked on the window, and after a brief pause, it rolled down. Behind the tinted glass sat Cynthia Whitmore, sunglasses obscuring her eyes and a green detox juice in her hand, as if she were savoring an eternal summer day. Her expression was one of disinterest mingled with superiority. "Good morning," Darius began, his voice respectful yet resolute. "I'm Officer King with the Crestfield Police Department. You're parked in a fire lane and need to move your vehicle immediately." Cynthia's eyes flickered with annoyance. "Do you know who I am?" she retorted, her tone icy. Darius maintained his composure. "I'm aware, ma'am, but no title gives anyone the right to break the law. Please remove your vehicle from the fire lane immediately." The onlookers watched, smartphones in hand, as Cynthia's posture stiffened. With a dismissive laugh, she responded, "My husband is the mayor. I'm here on an official press run. I only need 5 more minutes and then I'll be on my way. Why do you handle actual crimes instead of wasting time on trivialities?" The tension escalated as her words carried the weight of entitlement. Officer King's eyes did not waver. "Ma'am, the law is the law. I must insist that you comply or I'll have to take further action, including towing your vehicle." Cynthia's face flushed with indignation. "Are you threatening me? I expect a certain level of respect around here. I won't be lectured by a street cop." The words, so casually spat, echoed in the morning air. At that moment, onlookers began recording. The encounter was quickly becoming something larger than a simple traffic dispute. It was the collision of power and accountability. Darius calmly repeated his request. "I need you to move the vehicle now," Cynthia scoffed. "You'll regret this when my connections work things out." But before she could continue, the rumble of an approaching tow truck punctuated the scene. Within 2 minutes, the tow truck arrived, and the officer's decision was executed with precision. As the truck hooked up her Mercedes, Cynthia leaped out in a fury, her high heels clacking on the pavement. "You are making a huge mistake," she shouted, glaring down at Darius with eyes blazing in disbelief. Darius stood firm. "Ma'am, no one is above the law. Please, step back." Her protest was drowned out by the murmurs of the gathered crowd. Many cheered softly, emboldened by the officer's courage. Unbeknownst to Cynthia, a live stream of the confrontation was already spreading across social media platforms, capturing every moment of her downfall. Within hours, the video was viral. Crestfield's tranquil facade began to crack under the pressure of public outrage. Social media exploded with reactions. Citizens and activists alike were quick to share the clip. Hashtags like Officer King and Karen Exposed trended, and soon national media picked up the story. The incident was no longer a local inconvenience. It had become a symbol of the broader struggle for equality and accountability. Inside City Hall, Mayor Whitmore was scrambling to regain control of the narrative. Rather than standing by his wife, he found himself caught in the whirlwind of public opinion. He attempted to downplay the incident in press conferences, but the damage was done. His once impeccable reputation was tarnished by the very behavior he had tried to shield behind his political influence. Cynthia, for her part, tried to retreat into her bubble of privilege. She made several public statements, claiming she was misunderstood and that the media was out to tarnish her image. But her attempts were met with harsh criticism from a community tired of elitism and double standards. The once untouchable figure was now facing the very consequences she had long dismissed. Within days, the local newspaper featured headlines that read, "Justice served in Crestfield, a lesson in accountability," and "No one is above the law, not even the mayor's wife." In town meetings, citizens rallied together, demanding reforms to ensure that public officials and their families would no longer wield unchecked power. As the days turned into weeks, the ripple effects of that fateful morning began to transform the very fabric of Crestfield. Neighborhood associations and civic groups held heated debates about fairness and governance. Residents, once divided by subtle class distinctions, found common ground in the belief that justice must prevail, no matter how high the status of those involved. A community forum was organized at the town's community center. The event was attended by a diverse group of citizens, from retirees who had watched Crestfield change over the years to young professionals eager for a more transparent future. At the heart of the forum was a call for accountability and reform. A local teacher named Elaine took the stage. With a measured but passionate tone, she recounted the incident, emphasizing that it was not just about one woman's arrogance, but a broader pattern of behavior that had long been ignored. "We have tolerated disrespect for too long," she said. "Today we stand together not to punish one person, but to demand a system where everyone, regardless of who they are, is held accountable." Her words resonated with the audience. Over the following weeks, several citizens, inspired by the community forum, stepped forward to demand a formal investigation into the practices of the mayor's office and the local government. The movement grew, fueled by social media and public demonstrations that spanned every corner of Crestfield. In the wake of the uproar, the Crestfield Police Department found itself under a microscope. Officer Darius King, once seen as just another uniformed man, had become a symbol of integrity and resilience. His actions had sparked debates that reached far beyond traffic regulations. They ignited conversations about racial equality, abuse of power, and the very nature of justice in a society where privilege often dictated outcomes. But even as praise poured in for Darius, Not everyone was pleased. Within the precinct, some colleagues whispered that his steadfastness had disrupted the long-held traditions of the department. There were those who believed that his actions might create a rift between the police force and the local elite. The tension within the department grew, as some officers feared that the ripple effects of this incident could jeopardize relationships built over decades. Chief Harold Matthews, a veteran officer with decades of service, found himself in a difficult position. He respected Darius for his commitment to the law, yet he was also mindful of the delicate balance between enforcing rules and maintaining community relationships. In a closed-door meeting with the police board, he addressed the concerns. "We all know the importance of upholding the law, regardless of who is involved," Chief Matthews said firmly, "but we must also be mindful that our actions have broader implications." Officer King did exactly what any officer would do under the same circumstances. It's time we address the systemic issues that allowed this kind of entitlement to flourish. There were discussions about retraining, establishing clearer guidelines, and improving accountability across the board. The incident had forced the department to confront uncomfortable truths about its role in a society where bias and power imbalances were still very much present. For Darius, the experience was both a professional challenge and a personal triumph, one that would shape his future in ways he had never imagined. Mayor Whitmore's handling of the incident only deepened the divide in Crestfield. His attempts at spin and damage control fell flat as more citizens voiced their demands for change. At a critical town hall meeting, the mayor was forced to answer for the behavior of those closest to him. The meeting was packed, and the energy in the room was electric with anticipation and anger. One by one, residents took to the podium, recounting their own experiences of neglect and disrespect by public officials. The mayor's facade of polished charm cracked under the weight of raw, heartfelt testimonies. Even some of his staunchest supporters began to question whether his leadership still represented the best interests of the community. In a dramatic moment that would be etched in Crestfield's history, a longtime resident, Mr. James Carter, spoke up. His voice was trembling, but his message was clear. "We have waited too long for change. Today we say enough is enough. Our leaders must be accountable for their actions, and that starts with every single one of us standing up for what is right." The town hall meeting marked a turning point. What had begun as a single incident had now sparked a movement. A grassroots campaign that sought not only to hold Cynthia Whitmore accountable, but to overhaul a system that had allowed such abuses to go unchecked for far too long. In the months that followed, a series of reforms swept through Crestfield. The City Council established a citizen-led oversight committee, tasked with reviewing the actions of public officials. Policies were revised to ensure that no one, regardless of status, could act with impunity. The Oversight Committee's formation was widely celebrated as a victory for transparency and fairness. Amid these changes, Officer Darius King continued his service with humility and dedication. His actions on that Friday morning had set in motion a wave of change that was bigger than any one person. Invitations poured in for him to speak at schools, community centers, and even at local government meetings. His simple declaration, "I was just doing my job," present many who felt powerless against an entrenched system of privilege. In a series of interviews, Darius was asked about his motivations. He explained that he believed in the principle that every person was equal under the law. "Justice is not about titles or wealth," he said. "It's about doing what's right, no matter who stands in front of you." That's something I learned long ago, and it's something I'm proud to live by. The transformation in Crestfield was palpable. Even as old habits and prejudices slowly receded, a new culture of accountability and mutual respect began to take root. The story of the mayor's wife and the uncompromising officer served as a catalyst for broader discussions about civic responsibility and the importance of holding leaders to a higher standard. While the public and political landscapes shifted, the personal lives of those involved were not left untouched by the events that had unfolded. Cynthia Whitmore, once the epitome of entitlement, found herself increasingly isolated. The public outrage left her with few allies. Her husband, caught between loyalty to his wife and the need to salvage his own political career, struggled with guilt and indecision. Late at night, away from the glare of public opinion, Cynthia began to question the choices she had made. In the solitude of their once stately mansion, she was forced to confront the reality that her behavior had contributed to the downfall of not only her reputation, but also the trust that the community had placed in her family. The lavish parties and carefully curated image had all come crashing down, leaving behind only a bitter taste of regret. Meanwhile, Mayor Whitmore was left to pick up the pieces. His political career was in jeopardy, and he had no choice but to publicly acknowledge that changes were needed. In a candid televised address, he admitted, "I allowed personal bias and a sense of entitlement to blind me to the very real needs of our community. It is time for me to step aside and allow new voices that represent the true spirit of Crestfield, to lead us forward." For many, this was the beginning of a healing process, a chance to rebuild trust and establish a governance that truly served the people. The incident had exposed deep-seated issues, but it had also provided the impetus for long overdue reform. Chapter 9: The Ripple Effect. News of Crestfield's transformation spread far beyond the small town. Across the region, citizens and officials in other communities took note of the changes implemented in the wake of the confrontation between Cynthia and Officer King. Journalists, political analysts, and community leaders began to study the Crestfield model as an example of how holding power accountable could lead to genuine progress. In nearby towns, similar oversight committees were established and public forums were organized to discuss the role of law enforcement and political accountability. Social media campaigns ignited debates about privilege, justice, and the importance of standing up for what is right. The incident became a symbol, a reminder that when one person has the courage to enforce fairness, the ripple effects can transform entire communities. For Officer King, the impact was both humbling and inspiring. His actions had not only changed the course of one woman's life, but had ignited a movement that challenged the status quo. In interviews that followed, he was repeatedly asked if he felt that his career would ever be the same. With a gentle smile, he replied, "I'm just glad that I could make a difference. Every day on the job, I learned that even the smallest act of standing up for the law can create waves of change." As Crestfield moved forward, the scars of the past remained, a reminder of a time when privilege was wielded without accountability. Yet the community's resilience shone through. A commemorative mural was painted in the center of town depicting a symbolic image of scales of justice balanced perfectly over a silhouette of the city. It was a tribute to those who had fought for change and a promise that the mistakes of the past would never be forgotten. At the unveiling of the mural, a local poet recited verses that captured the essence of the journey Crestfield had undertaken. "In the echo of a single stand, a town awoke to truth," she intoned, her voice resonating in the cool evening air. "Let every act of defiance against injustice be a seed of hope, and may the legacy of courage guide us home." It was in this moment that the full measure of the events became clear. What had begun as a minor traffic dispute had evolved into a powerful narrative of redemption, transformation, and collective awakening. The legacy of that fateful morning lived on in the hearts and minds of the citizens, who had learned that every individual had the power to shape their community. In the months following the incident, as Crestfield settled into its new rhythm, voices of change continued to resonate. Community leaders organized workshops and town halls, ensuring that the principles of accountability, transparency, and respect were woven into the very fabric of daily life. Schools incorporated lessons on civic responsibility, and even the local businesses joined the movement, pledging to support initiatives that promoted fairness and equality. Officer King, though modest about his contributions, was celebrated as a hero. He was invited to speak at universities and public events, where he recounted his experiences and stressed that the law was an equalizer, a force that, when applied impartially, could heal divisions and build bridges between communities. His message was simple yet profound, that everyone, regardless of their background or station in life, deserved the same measure of respect and justice. Yet not all were ready to embrace this new order. A small faction of the old guard clung to outdated notions of superiority and entitlement, fearing that the very changes that had empowered the community would undermine their privileged positions. They attempted to sow seeds of dissent, whispering that the reforms were nothing more than a political fad, and that tradition should not be discarded lightly. But in Crestfield, the momentum for change was unstoppable, carried forward by the voices of those who believed that true progress was measured by the courage to stand up for what was right. For Cynthia Whitmore, the journey from arrogance to remorse was a long and painful one. Isolated from the circles that once flattered her, she was forced to confront the consequences of her actions. In the privacy of her once lavish study, she began to read about social justice and the history of civil rights, searching for answers to the questions that now plagued her conscience. Slowly, she started to understand that true power did not come from title or wealth, but from empathy and the willingness to change. Her transformation was not immediate, and it was met with skepticism from many who had once derided her. Yet over time, small gestures began to speak louder than the echoes of her past misdeeds. Cynthia started volunteering at local shelters and community centers. She joined dialogues on reform and made public apologies to those she had wronged. Though forgiveness was not instant, it was a start, a sign that even those steeped in privilege could learn the lessons of humility. As the seasons changed in Crestfield, so too did the hearts of its residents. What had been a town divided by fear and entitlement gradually began to heal. The discussions that once inflamed passions turned into constructive debates on how best to build a future where fairness and justice were the cornerstones of every decision. While the media spotlight had focused on the dramatic showdown and the subsequent reforms, there were countless unseen victories that marked the true success of Crestfield's transformation. Small acts of kindness, renewed friendships between neighbors, and a general sense of optimism began to fill the spaces once occupied by bitterness and suspicion. Local businesses collaborated on community projects, and once estranged families found common ground in working together to restore their shared town. The ripple effect of one officer's stand had reached into every corner of life in Crestfield, fostering an environment where respect and mutual support were cherished values. A young couple who had once hidden their interracial relationship out of fear of community disapproval now walked hand in hand down the town's main street with heads held high. A veteran whose service had been overlooked by the system was recognized and celebrated at a town ceremony. Every small victory contributed to a larger narrative, a narrative that declared that change was not only possible but inevitable when people chose to stand together for justice. One crisp autumn morning, nearly 6 months after the incident that had set off the chain of events, the town of Crestfield was abuzz with anticipation. A new initiative was being launched, one that would permanently enshrine the values of accountability and transparency in the town's governance. The Citizen Oversight Committee, formed in the wake of the controversy, was ready to present its first report to the public. At the town's central auditorium, filled to capacity with residents eager to witness history in the making, the committee's chairman took the stage. He spoke with a measured tone that balanced hope and determination. He declared, "We stand at the crossroads of our past and our future. We have seen what happens when power goes unchecked, and we have learned that every voice matters. This report is not just about holding a few individuals accountable. It is a testament to the spirit of unity and justice that now defines Crestfield." As he outlined the new measures, including enhanced transparency in public spending, regular audits of municipal activities, and open forums for citizens to voice their concerns, the room erupted in applause. For many, it was a moment of catharsis, a reaffirmation that the hardships of the past had paved the way for a more inclusive, honest future. Even Officer King was in attendance. Standing near the front, he quietly observed the unfolding events. His journey had been marked by both praise and hardship, but now he was a living symbol of integrity. In that moment, the applause was not just for the committee, but for every person in Crestfield who had dared to believe in change. In the wake of the committee's report, Crestfield began to feel like a different place. a town reborn from the ashes of its old self. The reforms that had been implemented were not merely administrative changes, but a renewal of the community's commitment to fairness and equality. The lessons learned from the confrontation between Cynthia Whitmore and Officer Darius King had become woven into the town's identity. New leaders emerged from unexpected places. Community organizers, once dismissed as idealists, found themselves at the forefront of political change. The police department, inspired by the actions of one of its own, began to foster stronger ties with the community, establishing outreach programs that bridged divides and built trust. For many residents, the transformation was a long time coming, a healing process that had been built on the courage of ordinary people. In coffee shops, on park benches, and at dinner tables, conversations turned to hope, progress, and the belief that every individual had the power to make a difference. The incident, once a flash of indignation, had now become a beacon of possibility. As Crestfield embraced its new identity, the lives of its citizens became more intertwined than ever before. Long-standing rivalries faded away, replaced by a collective commitment to building a community where every person mattered. The ripple effect of that fateful morning continued to manifest in unexpected ways. A local artist, inspired by the events, created a mural that depicted not just the scales of justice, but also the diverse faces of Crestfield. The mural became a meeting point for community gatherings, a symbol of unity that drew people together from every walk of life. In that shared space, the boundaries of class, race, and privilege dissolved into a tapestry of hope and resilience. In a small neighborhood on the outskirts of town, a community garden was established by residents who had once been divided by old prejudices. They tilled the soil side by side, planting not only seeds for vegetables and flowers, but also for new beginnings. The garden came to represent a shared vision, one where hard work, cooperation, and respect would yield a harvest far richer than any that money or power could buy. For Officer King, these moments were a reminder that his role went beyond enforcing the law. Every conversation he had, every smile exchanged with a child playing in the street, reinforced his belief that the true measure of justice lay in everyday acts of kindness and solidarity. Late one evening, when the town had settled into a quiet lull and the only sound was the distant hum of traffic, Officer King took a solitary walk along Crestfield's old Main Street. The neon signs of shuttered storefronts and the soft glow of street lamps painted a reflective scene, a mirror of the changes that had taken place over the past months. In his mind, he replayed the events of that morning when he had approached Cynthia Whitmore's vehicle. He remembered the disbelief in her eyes, the defiant tone, and the swift arrival of the tow truck. It was a moment that had defined him, not because it was dramatic, but because it was necessary. It was a moment that reaffirmed his belief in the rule of law and in the idea that no one should be allowed to place themselves above accountability. As he strolled, he passed by the community center where a small group of residents were gathered around a fire pit, sharing stories and dreams for a better tomorrow. Their laughter, their shared hope, reminded him that the fight for justice was an ongoing journey, one that was filled with both victories and setbacks. In that quiet moment, he realized that the true impact of his actions would not be measured in citations or headlines, but in the lasting change that had taken root in the hearts of those he served. News of Crestfield's transformation soon spread to neighboring towns and even caught the attention of state officials. Delegations from other municipalities visited to learn about the new oversight model and the ways in which the community had rebuilt trust between citizens and law enforcement. In meetings with local leaders, Officer King was often asked to share his perspective on how a simple act of enforcing the law could spark a revolution of accountability. During one such meeting, a council member from a nearby city asked, "How did one small incident change so much?" Officer King paused before replying, "It wasn't just about enforcing a parking rule. It was about showing that when someone stands up for what's right, even the most entrenched systems begin to crumble." Change starts with a single act of courage. The story of Crestfield began to inspire legislative changes. Bills were introduced in state legislatures calling for stronger accountability measures for public officials. Law enforcement agencies across the state initiated training programs that emphasized impartiality and community engagement. What had once seemed like an isolated incident had now evolved into a catalyst for systemic reform. As with any period of transformation, new challenges soon emerged. Not everyone was eager to embrace change without reservations. In the corridors of power, remnants of the old guard continued to resist the reforms. There were heated debates, legal challenges, and moments of tension that threatened to derail the progress that had been made. Yet, in the face of adversity, the community's determination only grew stronger. At one particularly tense public hearing, a vocal critic of the reforms declared that the changes were an attack on tradition. The room fell silent as voices rose in protest on the other side. A community activist, who had been a tireless supporter of the new oversight committee, stood up and said, "Tradition should never be an excuse for injustice. Our history is written by those who dare to change it. We owe it to ourselves and our future to keep fighting for a fair and just society." The words struck a chord with many, and even some of the critics were forced to reconsider their positions. The debates, though bitter at times, served to further clarify the values that Crestfield was committed to: transparency, accountability, and the recognition that true progress could only be achieved when every individual was treated with dignity and respect. In the final stretch of Crestfield's journey toward lasting reform, the story of Cynthia Whitmore became a cautionary tale of unchecked arrogance and the high cost of privilege. Her transformation, though slow and met with skepticism, symbolized the possibility of redemption. In rare public appearances, she acknowledged her past mistakes, expressing regret for the harm she had caused and a tentative hope that she could one day be part of a more inclusive society. Her path to redemption was not met with immediate forgiveness. The wounds inflicted on the community ran deep, and trust was not rebuilt overnight. Yet, in time, small gestures of change began to matter. Cynthia's efforts to contribute to community service, her quiet moments of self-reflection, and her public apologies all became part of a larger narrative of reconciliation, a narrative that recognized that even those steeped in privilege could learn and change. For the people of Crestfield, the journey was far from over, but every step forward was a victory for justice, for accountability, and for the enduring power of community spirit. As we reach the end of this saga, let us reflect on the lessons learned from the tumultuous events in Crestfield. What began as a routine call about a parking violation evolved into a defining moment that challenged the very foundation of privilege and power. Officer Darius King's steadfast commitment to the law sparked a chain reaction that transformed not only a town, but also the hearts of its citizens. In the face of arrogance and entitlement, a single act of courage proved that justice is not just a concept, it is a living, breathing force that can change lives. The story of Crestfield is a reminder that every one of us has the power to stand up for what is right, to challenge the status quo, and to build a community where fairness reigns supreme. Here at A1 Storyteller, we believe that every story has the potential to inspire change. If you feel the fire of this truth, if you believe that justice must prevail regardless of who stands in its way, then share this story. Let it be a spark that ignites conversations, a call to action that reminds us all that no one is above accountability. Thank you for joining us on this journey. This is A1 Storyteller, where each narrative is a battle cry for truth, and every act of courage is a step toward a brighter future. Remember, the power to change the world lies within each of us. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your spirit strong, and your commitment to justice unwavering. The events in Crestfield teach us that even in a world that seems governed by power and privilege, the spirit of justice can never be silenced. A single act, a firm word from a determined officer, can set in motion a chain reaction that challenges the very pillars of injustice. As the echoes of that fateful day continue to resonate in every corner of Crestfield, we are reminded that change begins with one person's refusal to accept the status quo. Officer King's legacy is not written solely in the headlines or social media posts. It lives in every community meeting, every reform policy, and every life touched by the realization that accountability matters. His story, intertwined with the collective voice of a people rising against injustice, is a testament to the fact that true power comes not from titles or wealth, but from the courage to stand up for what is right. For those who are watching and listening, let this be more than just a story, it is a call to action. In our own lives, we may face moments when injustice looms large. In those moments, remember Crestfield, remember Officer King, and remember that each of us has the strength to challenge the status quo. Thank you for watching this epic tale of accountability, courage, and the transformative power of standing up for justice. If you believe that truth should always prevail, hit the like button, share this story, and subscribe to A One Storyteller. Join us as we continue to bring you the stories that make a difference. Until next time, keep fighting for what's right because every act of bravery lights the path to a better tomorrow.